Former President Jacob Zuma has been suspended from the ANC. The party announced that decision yesterday in a briefing, stating that this follows his announcement of his backing of the newly formed uMkhonto Sizwe party, which was formed in December. But what does the latest development mean for the governing party ahead of the elections? Let's bring in Thinc Foundation CEO, Dr. Mathebula, also joining us for his political commentary via our video link this Tuesday morning. Dr. Mathebula, it's lovely to see you. Thanks very much indeed for making time. In that statement yesterday, the ANC citing Rule 25.6 of its constitution that speaks of exceptional circumstances where they don't even have to consult the person in question before dishing out a suspension. But it's interesting that this was a suspension and not an expulsion as called by some in the ANC.
Thank you, Ayanda, and thank you to your listeners. Yes, Ayanda, the ANC is applying what in law they call odi alteram partem. They don't have to listen to him, because the truth of the matter is that Jacob Zuma's actions have put the ANC into disrepute. He's acting in a way that makes him an existential threat to the ANC. We cannot run away from that. So to say, he has become a political tumor that requires surgical attention just to remove him. And politically, he made a choice. We cannot do that. And I think the ANC should have long withdrawn his membership without any possibility of him being given an opportunity to have a hearing. But because we are a rule-based society, and South Africa is a country that does the rule of law, and the ANC as the governing party needs to be seen at every instance that it is giving people the opportunity to reply. It has been doing those mistakes all this time, but it looks like the renewal program of the ANC has also made them to realize that they have a responsibility to apply the constitution that they are governing with and the principles of law that are underpinning it. And one of the principles of that is that you don't just dismiss a person, you suspend a person, you give a person a time to respond so that you can know if there's something that you were not aware of that makes the action of a person legitimate. And I think this process of 48 hours is giving the ANC the opportunity to say, maybe there's something we don't know about what Zuma is doing. In this 48 hours, it's his opportunity to come and clarify and ventilate what he's going to do. But the risk of that is that if he can come with compelling reasons that might generate a conversation or a discussion within the ANC, but his reasons are genuine, can we talk about them? That might start an internal rebellion, because the ANC is tinkering on an internal rebellion if they don't manage this thing properly.
That's interesting. If we stay with your analogy, anybody who's had to deal with a tumor will know that you have to remove it expeditiously because it could lead into a bigger disaster. In my understanding of what you're saying, this is a far-gone conclusion. It's more procedural, the suspension, than anything else. And so the question is, why not just go for the jugular, especially when you consider what's at stake?
Remember, the ANC is a governing party, and there's a constitutional order in this country. And if they are a governing party and there's a constitutional order in this country that we all have to abide by. Even the ANC, the ANC is actually a corporate citizen of South Africa. It cannot operate outside that. Otherwise, it opens itself up to be taken to a court of law where this thing can be ventilated in a court of law. So the law requires you. There's no way in which you can just summarily dismiss a person and just cut him off and forget about it. You need to give a person an opportunity to make representation, and on the basis of that representation, then you go to the next step if it is necessary. But if you read that section that they've put, the section says they don't, the circumstances that they are under, they can actually suspend him and leave him there, and then and he responds, and after he responds, they'll give him a time when they're going to give him a hearing. And for me, this is a sign that there is renewal in the ANC. Remember, the ANC at some point was telling the country that if you take the ANC to court, you must consider yourself to have summarily dismissed yourself. And they came back from that. They said, but we are wrong. Because these courts are the courts that we have established as a governing party. So if a person takes us there, let's go and respond. Now the ANC is getting into the mode of being a lawful or a law-respecting organization. And I think that's the sign of, I don't know if it's because they have a president who did law as a qualification, but the truth of the matter is that this is one of the most meticulous way that they are handling it. And actually, it's case study material in the ANC the way we know it.
Wow. You know, there certainly was a need for some kind of maneuvering because of the different interests that exist here. And of course, among the many questions top of mind, given the kind of year we have, is how much of a threat Jacob Zuma is outside of the ANC. What's your take on his positionality, his resonance, especially in places like KwaZulu-Natal, where, you know, we've always understood he's had a relatively stronger stronghold than anywhere else in the country?
Ayanda, anyone in this country that wants to live the illusion that Jacob Zuma does not have support. Jacob Zuma is what we call a political celebrity. He's got friends as a politician, more than people that support him because they know what they are supporting in him. No. He's got friends. You know, he's a Brenda Fassie of our politics. So. And if we are going to undermine that, and we are not meticulous about that, his supporters are just going to surprise you. So that's why Jacob Zuma must be treated as an existential threat for the ANC. Because, Ayanda, historically, since 1999, there's been this 8 to 12 to 14 million number of eligible voters that were not voting. And those eligible voters that were not voting, we don't know why they are voting, but they are available for any maverick to take. But in the ANC, there are discontents that Jacob Zuma knows about. He knows what he failed to do for the people of South Africa, and he knows if he can say the things that he failed to do, many people are going to follow him. He knows as a leader that if I speak on this thing, and if you look at it, he has evoked the issue of traditional leaders about land. He has evoked the issue of the economic transformation. He's just playing into those spaces, and he has also evoked the issue of independent churches. Now, those things, he knows that the ANC has been ignoring that, and he is going to slowly towards the elections bring up only those things that he knows. You have seen that NEC longer than many. Some of the people in that NEC are actually younger than the time he has spent in there. You know, so he's not a person to be taken for granted, but I think the ANC, this first step that they took, it's meticulous, it looks like it is scientific, and even the way Fikile Mbalula, for the first time I saw Fikile Mbalula reading a script. You know, he read that thing on television. You could see that he was sticking to the script so that he doesn't make any legal mistake. And that, to me, tells you that the renewal process in the ANC is starting to kick in, and the ANC is becoming a rule of law organization.
Sure. Well, these are very early signs if that is happening, I suppose. There's going to be a need for introspection, right? There are people who are sympathetic with the governing party saying that it really was in a difficult position between a rock and a hard place, as the saying goes. But there are others who believe that this is all the ANC is making. They built this monster, if the former president has become that, by the ways through which laws were bent. They went out of their way. You speak of a Fikile Mbalula who sometimes speaks off script. The last time he did that, he made headlines for essentially admitting to the public that MPs were asked to toe the line in protecting the former president. How much of that introspection do you reckon is going to happen in time for it to make a difference by the time we head to the polls?
Look, I think it is happening. Fikile Mbalula has been watered down. In not so to they say, ukolobile. He has just been watered down a little bit so that he should not be too much of a maverick. Otherwise, he can create a crisis into this thing. And I think they must also water down Bekitele and the chairperson Duma in KZN and Mtolo. I think those three people, they need to be watered down to say, guys, you must not say things that are going to play into the hands of of Jacob Zuma. Their statement, it speaks about the possibility of a Renamo and of all those organizations that were opposing the governing party. I think it's unfortunate to have had that paragraph in the statement because it is now labeling and pigeonholing Zuma into a space that he's not going to be happy about, and we don't know how he's going to react, but it's now water under the bridge. And I think where we are sitting now, we are sitting in a state where we need sober leadership, and the ANC needs to provide leadership as it competes for elections. But the truth of the matter is that the ANC is facing a formidable person in this election, and they need to rise above him because what they did in the past weeks, he was starting to rise above them.
Sure. Thanks for your take, Dr. Mathebula, CEO of the Thinc Foundation.